In the very heart of a state that had made war its highest ideal, a warfaring king created a home for the delights and pleasures of the mind. About him, he gathered the intellectual elite of Europe to lay the foundation of a new and enlightened age. Before the gates of Berlin, once the capital of Prussia, and hard by Potsdam, are the palaces and gardens of Sanssouci. Here, one of the foremost men in European history left his imprint upon the natural world. Frederick the Great, Frederick II of Prussia, was a monarch of exceptional powers. One of the great practitioners of the arts of war, he was also a man who savoured the rewards of the mind. Sanssouci means carefree. The name suggests a life of ease, sensuous delight, even hedonism. But this summer palace in its magical park served more purposes than that alone. It was intended as a refuge to which Frederick could withdraw from the duties of state and of warfare. In fact, he made Sanssouci the intellectual centre of his realm. Frederick's crown was little older than he was. It was his grandfather in 1701 who first styled himself King of Prussia. That was just 11 years before Frederick was born. Prussia was merely a patchwork of marches and counties on a barren plain. The kingdom was so piecemeal, its parts so scattered, that it seemed to be mainly borders. Small wonder that the army was so important to Prussia. Military drill, obedience and discipline were the be-all and end-all. If circumstances had not made him king, Frederick once remarked, he would probably have become a philosopher. But as it was, he found himself at the head of Europe's fifth largest army, and it seemed a pity not to put it to use. Barely had he been crowned king, but he attacked Silesia. If he was to be a soldier, he'd be one nobody would forget. In the heartland of this kingdom, he had forests felled and planned a retreat where he could live as a human being. The palace he had built on a hill near Potsdam was not designed as a bombastic Baroque statement of Frederick's might and greatness. Instead, it's a low pavilion building that fits into the natural setting modestly and without disharmony. It's a place that suggests intimate gatherings. It's not about being seen. What matters is what we see. And what we see when we gaze at these gardens is a standing invitation to linger amid natural tranquility. The harmony of art and nature at Sanssouci is extraordinary. It's as if the landscape itself were an interior. In Rococo style, rooms were created in the gardens where Frederick might spend his time in thought or dreams, under the eye of the muses, the goddesses of the arts, of wisdom and knowledge. None of this is real. Nothing is what it seems. It's all a playful and magnificent illusion. The caryatids on the garden front aren't actually supporting anything at all. The stone giants seemingly groaning under the weight of the roof have better things to do, participating in a bacchanalian orgy. The style evolved here was so strongly associated with Frederick that it was dubbed Frederician Rococo. It was a contrast to the austerity of Berlin, more of a military parade ground than a city, and to the naked functionality of Potsdam, where every building was a soldier's billet. Sanssouci was an island of tranquility, in a kingdom where all things served the army. But what was this man like who chose to live here and to rule in Berlin? Perhaps he liked the idea of living more than living itself, just as he loved women in the form of paintings and sculptures, but was repelled by the flesh and blood genuine article. For life he substituted marble, just as to represent death he had ruined follies constructed. The hill of ruins is another illusion, created to camouflage the reservoir that feeds the fountains in the grounds. In this case, the ruinous state was close to the truth, though. The fake incompletion was all too apt an image of an unanticipated failure. In Frederick's day, the fountains were unable to spout more than the thinnest of jets, because there were no pumps capable of filling the reservoir in its high-lying location. It was only after Frederick's death that the fountains of Sanssouci came into their own. After a taxing morning busy with affairs of state, Frederick would retire to his books and read and write till late at night. His book, Anti-Machiavelli, caused a stir throughout Europe for its enlightened political ideas and the crusading position it adopted on their behalf. In his Holy of Holies, alone and undisturbed, the king studied the works that fired contention in his times. It was he personally who persuaded his favourite author, whom he valued above all others, to come to the Prussian court and indeed stay 3 years, Voltaire. After one choice banquet, Voltaire dubbed Frederick a philosopher king. But it was beyond Voltaire's comprehension that that same philosopher king could preach enlightenment but still not free the serfs in his lands, and moreover could spend the best years of his life waging war and bringing death to thousands. And so in due course Voltaire had to go. Despots, however enlightened they may be, do not put up with mockery and satire indefinitely. When the 7 Years' War was over, 20 years after he built Sanssouci, Frederick had a new and quite different palace built in the park. A bit of a swagger, he called it. The Neues Palais expressed the triumph that sealed the years of fearful war, and the defiant spirit in which Frederick contemplated the massive costs of that war. The penury and misery of Prussia were universal. The nobility were impoverished, the peasantry were ruined. Whole villages had been razed to the ground, whole towns wiped out. But the kingdom of Prussia had survived. What was more, it had even extended its territory at the expense of the Habsburg Empire. And like Prussia, Frederick too had survived. Now he was nicknamed Old Fritz. Racked by illness, he withdrew more and more to his enchanted realm of Sanssouci. In old age, he developed a particular fondness for the Chinese pavilion. Since every monarch in Europe now felt he had to have a pavilion of this kind, Frederick was concerned that his should outshine the rest in its truly fabulous attention to detail. It's a charmed spot. Rococo blends with Far Eastern exoticism. The place is peaceful, conducive to contemplation. Frederick rarely left Sanssouci now. More and more he gave his time to private matters. He still invited young thinkers to the palace, and he resumed contact with Voltaire, albeit only by letter. Now that he was in his old age, wrote the king, he wanted to enjoy his life at last. But by that date he was an old, lonely and embittered man whom others avoided because of his curt manner. After his death, Frederick the Great's successors altered and added to the park as they saw fit, just as they transformed and augmented the power of Prussia as they saw fit. But they all built on foundations Frederick laid, foundations which remain the basis of modern Germany. Viewed in that light, Sanssouci is far more than just a park and the handsome buildings in it. It's a flashpoint of history.